Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at the almost perfect Gamemax Icon Mesh ARGB. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at Gamemax's new entry into the Micro ATX gaming case market. This is the Icon Mesh ARGB. There's actually two versions of this case available on the market. This is the mesh version, as you can tell by the name, but there's also a solid panel front as well. So if you want one with dual tempered glass on the front, you certainly can do. Both prices approximately the same, so we're looking at a recommended retail price here in the UK of £59.99. I have already seen these on sale at scan.co.uk here in the UK for £49.99. So £50 for a case, Micro ATX, lots of features, lots of airflow, 4 included addressable RGB fans. Sounds like there's a lot to like, but is there? Let's find out. So in today's video we're going to go through, do a quick teardown of the case, see what it's all about, check out the pros, the cons, all that kind of stuff, and see if it's going to be suitable for your next Micro ATX build. Now of course you can, if you want to, you can put an ITX motherboard in here. It will look a little bit kind of swamped in there, but certainly you can do, the option is there. But really this is suited more towards Micro ATX motherboard builds. Sadly, no adoption for ATX. It literally is too small. This is a relatively compact case. I'll put the measurements of the case up on the screen so you can see what it's like now. Obviously, fits pretty much any Micro ATX board with no problems at all. And also, something which is really nice to see from a Micro ATX chassis is actually a lot of room for installing components, lots of room for fans, water cooling, all those kinds of cool things. So starting off on the front, obviously, we've got this mesh front panel, which actually, really nice mesh on there. Relatively good airflow. I have found actually on this particular version, when you get this case from the manufacturer, it does actually come with the fans mounted more towards the front of the case. You can mount them behind the metal panel if you want to. And I actually find with my testing that you do get considerably more airflow with it actually slightly recessed. So some of you may wish to do that. Personally me, I do actually like the fans being set back a little bit. I think it gives a nice illusion of a kind of depth or 3D to the RGB effect. Let me know what you think in the comments. Taking the front panel off, very simple to do. There is a grab handle on the bottom, so just a little tug. And the front panel comes off nice and easily for cleaning purposes. And as you can see, pretty decent mesh there, lots of airflow. If you do put the fans towards the front, so as you can see at the moment, they're set back. If you put them on the front side, it does actually restrict some of the airflow. And that is due to mostly this section on the side, which is completely open and unfiltered. The front section does act as a filter of such, so it will reduce some of the kind of dirt and contaminants getting inside your PC. Again, pros and cons for me, noise-wise and actual airflow-wise, this does work better with the fans mounted as they are, but you're probably also seeing some B-roll of when the fans are mounted on the front as well. It doesn't block off any of the RGB in this particular format, so yeah, I think it's down to the individual how you choose to proceed with your build. Looking at the front, obviously, if you don't want to use the included fans, which you may not want to do, it's entirely down to the end user. Obviously, it is a customizable case. If you want to, you can remove those fans. You can install in there 2 140s, should you wish to, or just a different set of fans. You can also put in there radiators, so it doesn't look like it's going to fit a 360 rad. They don't list it, and I certainly wouldn't want to attempt it. It looks like there's going to be a few too many things in the way there, but certainly a 280mm, 240mm is absolutely fine. Looking at the side of the case, you can see we've got a nice 4mm tempered glass side panel, and something which I actually like to see is the fact that they've got a nice black edging all the way around the outside of it there. So again, for fingerprints when you're actually installing it, if they do smudge on the inside, just adds a little bit of a sense of quality in my opinion. Taking the side panel off, very easy to do. There's just 2 thumb screws, not captive, but I don't think that really makes a great deal of difference personally. Side panel, as I said, 4mm thick, so yeah, pretty decent. Actually good, decent weight to it as well, and it is reinforced with metal on the 2 edges there. There is a very slight tint to it. There is actually a piece of film protecting it, both front and back, but there still is a very slight tint to it. So taking a look actually inside, so we've got a really nice layout inside. This is what I would consider pretty much the perfect layout for Micro ATX. The thing is with Micro ATX motherboards is when you put a graphics card in, you're always going to have the issue that the graphics card, especially if it's a dual slot or God forbid a triple slot, because of where it's going to sit, you're actually getting really close to this bottom panel. Now they've actually put a mesh ventilation system in the bottom deck, which is really good. So that means the airflow which is going to come in from this lower fan is going to come in, hit some of your wiring. Obviously it's going to reduce some of the airflow, but it's going to allow some air to circulate around this area. So graphics card wise, this is probably going to be one of the better options in terms of graphics cards, going to get those temperatures nice and cool. Also, there's options. You can, if you want, mount an additional 2 fans on this bottom deck. And they've already put 2 pillars in here, which would be suitable for vertical mounting. You do have the option to mount a graphics card in here, a dual slot card in the vertical position if you wanted to. Realistically, I think it's going to be a little bit too close to the glass to make that a really valid thing to do for certain higher end graphics cards, but certainly lower end ones, you shouldn't have any problems at all. Of course, if you want to, you can mount it in the traditional horizontal style. You can probably see at the moment there is actually a cheap and cheerful power supply in here. I've used this just to power up the fans and the lights, and also because it contrasts well, you can see obviously what is going on there. Power supply, there is a opening section there, so if you've got a particularly nice power supply that you want to show off the labels, then certainly you can do. At the front of the case, there's a little bit of a cutout here, so if you are putting water cooling components in here, 240 or 280mm rad, there's a little bit of a cutout there, so giving you a little bit more room. Even if you wanted to mount it with the fans inner rather than outer, you've still got plenty of room in there to mount a radiator. Although I would say, to give you a lot of room, then mount the fans on the front, bolt through the chassis into the radiator, and that will probably be the optimum solution, giving you a little bit more room inside. Next, I'm going to actually show you something else. I'm going to show you the back panel. The reason for that is because I want to take the back panel off so you can see the light coming through for the pass-throughs, but the back panel actually on this is particularly interesting. So now we flip around to look at the back panel, and as you can see, there's this kind of cutout section here for airflow, which I'm not entirely sure why it is there, but it certainly does seem to help. And obviously, if you've got a setup where you've got a negative airflow and just somewhere else where it's going to get some air, but I think it's just a nice thing that they've added, just adding a little bit more ventilation. It can't hurt the system, so yeah, all well and good. It isn't filtered or anything, so obviously dust-wise that could be potentially an issue. But actually, with the system in its stock configuration, with the included 4 addressable RGB fans, the airflow on this thing is absolutely insane, and it does produce a tremendous amount of positive pressure. So literally that's going to be pushing out excess air through the vents. So now with the back panel off, we can see all the pass-throughs, of which there is an absolute ton of them. So cable management is going to be an absolute piece of cake in this thing. So we've got a large hole up the top here for putting through your EPS connector, your 8-pin or 4-pin connectors for the power supply for your motherboard. Another hole there, so if you're putting fans on the top or maybe a radiator, then you've got pass-throughs there as well, and you've got one towards the front. So depending where your fans are, your radiator, there's plenty of options for passing through cables. Down through the side there, you've got the usual ATX ones to pass through there, which is all good. And even on the bottom, on the deck area, so you've got all this ventilation, but also you've got 3 pass-throughs in very good places. Obviously, over here for HD audio, in the middle for things like USB 2, that kind of thing. And on this end here, potentially for your front panel case I/O. Also, I'm glad to say that all of the mounting pillars for the motherboard are pre-installed here, so you've got your ATX mounting pillars already there. They do provide some extra ones as well. There is a little bag full of screws and fixings, and also some cable ties as well for a little bit of cable management. So it's nice that they've included all those. This is really good because we do find with a lot of more novice builders, if they're doing it for the first time, quite often if they get a case which doesn't have the pillars mounted at all, then people will mount the motherboard just directly to the metal, try to turn the system on and either get magic smoke or just not work at all. So the fact that they've pre-installed the pillars, I think, is a very good thing to do, especially for a case which is designed more towards that kind of amateur builder or for OEMs, that sort of thing. Right, so moving round to the back. So options here again, so you do have the option for vertical GPU mounting if you want to. Just a screw there, that bit all comes out, and also there's a retaining screw at the top. You've also got your standard PCI Express blanking plates there. Sadly, 3 of them are captive. The top one is removable and replaceable, but the others are those kind of bend out ones, which is a shame, but is the way things are going these days. Moving up, you've got the 120mm ARGB fan, which is pre-installed. A little bit of movement up and down, around about an inch or so of adjustment there. Nicely rounded off I/O section for your motherboard, and at the bottom, obviously, space for an ATX power supply. So taking a look inside at the back, so this is the business end. This is where we're going to do all our cable management and all that kind of stuff. I'm actually genuinely excited to try and build in this because they've ticked an awful lot of boxes here. So let's start towards the bottom. So at the bottom here, we've got an almost completely open basement section. There is a full-length filter running from front to back. You've also got a hard drive caddy in there, which is movable. I've actually loosened the screws off so you can move it across. So if you are mounting a radiator in that front section, you can just slide this back a little bit to give you a little bit more room. If you're not, then obviously push it forward if you're using a larger power supply. Power supply wise, it does say that it's up to 150mm power supply, but realistically with that cage being the fact it is actually fully removable as well, if you undo the 4 screws, you can take the whole thing right out. So realistically, you can put in pretty much any power supply you actually want to. No issues there at all. Moving up slightly, we've got our SSD tray here. So this is a removable SSD tray. You can add 2 drives on there, 2.5 inch. Very easy, nice and easy to access, all that kind of stuff. No problems there. Again, pass-throughs for cable management. You can see those again. Nice big cables there, nice big holes. Something which I've noticed as well is the fact that the motherboard is actually mounted relatively low down. So that is great because it gives you a lot of room up top. So if you want to put a radiator in the top section, even with fans connected, you're still going to gain access to your motherboard connections like your EPS connector, CPU headers, all those kinds of things, which is often something which is overlooked on these sorts of cases. My kind of normal go-to Micro ATX case at the moment generally tends to be the Colink Citadel. Now the problem that particular case has is, even though it's a little bit wider, it doesn't have that great deal of clearance at the top, which can be troublesome for mounting radiators. So the fact that they've actually kind of extended it up a little bit gives you a lot of flexibility there. So we should take a look at the I/O section. So let's take a look at that. So cable-wise, you've got a HD audio connector, you've got a USB connector, you've also got obviously front panel connections, and also there is just a single solitary USB 3.0 connection. So obviously that does mean there's only going to be one USB port on the top. So we'll take a look at that later. Now, at the beginning of this video, you'll probably remember me saying the almost perfect Micro ATX case. This is where some of the less perfect aspects come into play. So looking at the fans, now the fans themselves are great. They move an absolute ton of air, and I'll show you some B-roll now. I did some tests earlier with it all closed up, and it's got enough power just in the exhaust without fans here, just with that positive pressure to lift the piece of tissue off. And the fans themselves, in their unrestricted mode, are moving something like about 5 miles an hour worth of airflow, which is yeah, pretty insane. And even just the kind of the blowhole, the vent hole at the top with the filter removed, it puts out something along 2 miles an hour worth of wind. So there's loads of airflow in here, which is really great. The sad thing is that it isn't controllable. The fans themselves are all static speed. So for some people, that could be an issue. For me personally, I'm kind of on the fence about it. I have done some sound measurements, and with the sound recorder, we're getting somewhere in the region of about 32 to 33 decibels with the fans running, with the sound recorder actually in front of the case, which is obviously worst case scenario because you're not going to be playing with your head next to the case necessarily. But 32 decibels, 33 decibels is quite a lot, even though it is the sound of obviously air moving. The fans do play a part in that as well. So some people may find that it's a little bit on the noisy side. If you're after a silent PC, realistically you're going to want your fans to be hitting somewhere around the sort of 20 to 24 decibels mark. Good thing is you can actually daisy chain the fans all together. So because we don't have a PWM or a voltage DC connector, we do have the ability to daisy chain them all together. So the fans have all got daisy chains on them. So all 4 can be connected into one single point. They are powered by a SATA connection, which is always nice to see rather than an old-fashioned Molex. You do have the ability to actually change the fans via the LED switch, which is on the front of the case, which we'll look at later. So just a simple push button, you can cycle through the colors and different themes, of which there's about 30, so that's great. If you don't want to use the onboard control, then you can just plug in a traditional 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB to a motherboard that supports that, obviously. So this is going to be great if you're a system builder and you're just putting a cheap motherboard into a case and you want it to look pretty. Job done, it'll work no problem. If you want to spend a little bit more money on your motherboard and actually have some control over your RGB and get everything synchronized together, then you can do that as well. So it ticks both boxes there. I was going to leave it there, but I won't, because this wouldn't be a review without me speaking my mind. So the other thing which kind of does bother me a little bit is the fact that the way the fans work. So there's 4 fans included, one of which is your control module. So the bottom fan at the moment as it's set up is the control module. So from that comes your SATA connection, your 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB, the link to change from the button, etc, etc. So if for some reason during the build process, if for some reason you manage to damage one of those cables, effectively you've ruined all of your fans in one fell swoop. That again is one of the reasons why I said this is the almost perfect case. In its stock configuration, don't get me wrong, it's great, it moves a ton of air, looks very pretty, and it's relatively cost effective. But I do feel adding these kind of proprietary type connections into a case does potentially add a level of complexity, although it's designed to make it simple. But anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comment section. So moving down to the bottom of the case, so as you can see, we've got a full-length air filter here, just a removable panel one, not a slide out, but it does essentially the same thing. So again, Airflow is just off the hook in this case, it really is. Everything is just designed to move air, which is really good. Also at the bottom there, you've got the 4 screws there to adjust the cage if you want to, so you can slide that around. You can, of course, like I said earlier, undo the screws, take the cage out altogether, and you just got all this area at the bottom for airflow, which is awesome. Nice little foam feet on the bottom here on these legs, so that's all good, so it doesn't mark desks. I do not like rubber feet on PCs. I know they're probably better for sound deadening, but in terms of marking desks, especially white desks, rubber ones are a nightmare, whereas these foam ones are nice and just slide around nicely if you need to move it. So now let's take a look at the I/O on the top. Actually, I like the fact they've put it all along the side here. This is really good. You've got the power button at the front, so nice clicky power button. Next to that, you've got your reset button, which is very slightly recessed as well, a little bit more difficult to press. Next to that, you've got a USB 2.0 header. You've got 2 of those there, or 2 ports I should say rather. You've got the split microphone and earphone jacks, and next to that, you've got a single solitary, very lonely looking USB 3.0 connection. After that, at the back there is the LED button, so you can press that and you can cycle through the various colours. As I said, there's about 30 of them. I've got some footage from a little bit earlier, which you're probably seeing actually on the screen now. So we'll cycle through some of those so you can see what they look like, although we probably will fire up the power supply shortly and go through those again. Okay, so there you go, there is the case. There's also an instruction manual included, so it tells you how to connect up everything. It's a very basic affair, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. But there you go, there is the case set up. So if I'm completely silent now, you can listen to hear what the fans are like, so you can work out whether or not you feel it's too loud or not. I'll be honest with you, personally, I'm not entirely sure. Being the fact that they've sent it to us free of charge for review purposes, I feel that I should say something complimentary, but realistically, at the end of the day, I've got to be honest with you guys and tell you what the deal is, and also for Gamemax, so obviously they can improve on designs as they go through the process of manufacturing, all that kind of stuff. I really, really like the look of this case. I think it looks absolutely stellar, and when it comes to the Micro ATX market, there isn't a great deal on offer. There's kind of very compact cases which leave you with all kinds of frustrations in terms of what you can fit, what you can't. You can actually put in here up to 165mm CPU cooler, so you've got lots of clearance there for pretty much most normal coolers on the market, especially some of the 140mm fan versions. Things like the Noctua D15 you'd probably struggle, but certainly most coolers, tower coolers, you're going to be absolutely fine with. Of course, water cooling isn't going to cause any problems at all. There's just so much ventilation on here, and if I take off the top here, the magnetic filter, there's just the amount of airflow coming out the top is just insane. I did have a piece of tissue paper earlier, which I was kind of doing, and you can float a piece of tissue off the top of there, so there is just an insane amount of positive airflow. So in terms of keeping your components cool, it's going to be absolutely great. Graphics cards as well, like I said, they do suffer in Micro ATX chassis, pretty much regardless of what you try and do to them, just because of how close the fans are to that bottom deck. But with this amount of positive pressure in there, and also the fact that that bottom deck is ventilated, I think it's going to be absolutely fine for that. Most people probably won't go crazy with graphics cards in this kind of case. It is a little bit more on the cheaper side, so potentially it's going to be kind of lower TDP parts, but even those are going to keep really, really cool. Going through the cycle of the RGB, so press the button on the top, and you can go through the various lighting cycles, of which there's about 30 or so. So you've got the kind of green spin, which then fills up. It's actually a really pretty look to this case. The amount of different lighting styles, and you've got various colours you can cycle through. You've got your kind of almost unicorn puke setups here. The fans themselves actually do have multiple ring lighting, so the inner ring of the fan is lit and also the exterior as well, which again is a really nice thing to see, especially if you think this case is £50 or £60 is the recommended retail price. 50 is the cheapest I've seen it for. If you take into consideration you've got 4 fans, what are you going to spend on 4 fans? Arguably between kind of £8 and £10 a piece. So even if you go with a lower estimate of say £5 a fan, so that's 20 quid for fans, then you've got a £30 case, which for £30 is, yeah, it's phenomenal value for money. Anyway, lighting styles, you've got more options. You can go through various colours. You've got the Aurora Flow, which is the kind of original, almost like 12 volt RGB type style. Then you've got various types of unicorn puke, which you can go through and induce some kind of seizure with if you wish to. But yeah, there's tons of options, and if you want to relay the control back to your motherboard, you just press and hold that button for about 3 to 5 seconds and it will actually take the signal from your motherboard. with that 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB connection. Yeah, plenty of options. It's just a very pretty case in my opinion, and that is what it comes down to. A case is, it mostly is down to personal opinion. Obviously you can turn the lights off as well should you wish to. Yeah, it's a really nice case. The airflow is mental, it really is. If they were wanted to make this the perfect case, in my opinion, the only thing that I would suggest is to have some sort of PWM control on those fans. If you could control the speed on these fans, I would have no hesitancy of giving this a gold, highly recommended award. Just go out and buy one, no questions asked, because it is a great case. But for me personally, I do value noise, and the fact that these are spinning at a constant speed is going to generate more noise than you would normally if you had PWM control. So for that reason, I can't give it a 100% recommendation, but certainly for £50 on the Micro ATX market, especially at the moment, there isn't a lot to come that close to it. So yeah, let me know what you think about it in the comments section below. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.